Um, First, thank you everybody for joining today. I am Quoc Tran. I'm proud to say where I work, but in order to get fast approval for public speaking, to be able to present to all of you this timely topic, I have to go by blank title and also blank affiliate. And to present this personal opinion is myself. Please just the work as is by the merit of it and not who say it. And then if you have any feedback after the talk, please send your feedback to my wife, Linton. It is my family project. Since both of us work in demand forecast, I work in self-forecasting, and then my wife work in power usage forecasting. This topic today is about the prediction of COVID-19 on mortality and also resource use. I will go through the context of the work, a demo of the website, and then the modeling process and the usage of this work. I hope to get debate and feedback from all the audience to have a two-way discussion on the topic. And to all the New York City Data Science Fellow, I also would like to demonstrate real data science in action. So this one is the disclaimer page. I will pause to let the audience read it. So I found it really funny to watch someone repeating the oath. So it's my honor to have a lot of experts in the audience today from academia, industry, and policy field. So please use the raise your hand button and speak up when you want to ask me a question, correct my mistake, or want to add more to the topic. I will also stop at any time when the moderator announces a name. I will try to answer all the questions to the best of my knowledge, but you know, there's a lot of things that I don't know. I will say so. And then there is some question that I'm not authorized to speak publicly, especially any question about retail. I will say so too. So if you come today with that topic in mind, I must sincerely apologize. Yeah, it might take quite some time for me to get approval to say about it publicly. So I will have to do that later on and deliver later through other means, might be linked. So at first, let me start with the context. So I want to address the question that what time are we now? So now is very clear, but two months ago when I present to a small group about this same topic using the Chinese example, a lot of people still doubt about it, but now it is very clear that we have three crises in one: a global pandemic that relate to people health and the healthcare system, and then the local lockdown, which is related to the unemployment of people and the debt because they don't have the kind of the normal revenue stream or normal salary to pay for their liability. And then the third one is the supply demand shock. That means you have sometimes you stop something and then you start it, and then when you start, someone to still stop. So there is some start and stop disalignment, and it creates some kind of shock. So usually when at this time people want to know like what is the exit strategy, how long will all of these end? I want to go back to my normal life. So because it is three crises, the way it starts different, and then also the way it ends will also very different. The global pandemic, which everybody see now, uh, I don't know is it big yet, and I don't know how long it will take. The shortest is 2 to 3 months if every country go in sync together and then let the virus die down and it go is the previous all the previous virus that we know, like the living people know. Um, but it needs 2 to 3 months of lockdown in sync. But if, and we already see that it's not like that, so there is might be it will take longer until we find some kind of cure, like a vaccine, uh, uh, um, actual medical treatment, or we find some way, or we figure it out that the virus is not dangerous. But that that the thing that I have the less knowledge about. The second thing is about the local lockdown. It's about 2 to 3 months each time. This is coming from the experience of China, Italy, and a lot of places. Um, it might be different for the US. But this is the typical time frame, 2 to 3 months. And I say each time here because there is some kind of worry that we can, after the lockdown, we relax. And in some place, we need to do a re-lockdown later. So it totally depends on the location and the projection of the virus. Uh, and my main line of work is try to know will it happen to the place I live first. That is my main purpose when I doing this work. Uh, and then I hope that it can provide some kind of answer to people in the audience too. And then the third one is about the supply and demand shock. This is much harder to predict. Even I stay in the business and actually found hopeless because I'm not able to predict them because it depends on the other two. So if the other two finish fast, I think the supply demand shock will be small. But if it took longer, I think because of the global economy and the kind of like the interconnected between a lot of country, a lot of places, this will be kind of hard and totally depend on the location. So because of that, out of the three crises, the only thing that I have might be possible to provide the answer, and I will try my best to provide the answer, is for this one. So how long will the lockdown take? So the first one, let's start with expectation. So this is from a survey from the Gallup group, and it took near the end of March from the week between 13 and 22nd.
Hi guys, sorry, I think we're having a little bit of a connection issue.
Okay, so can you guys see the slide that we see before?
Yes, we can see
it. So let me continue. So that the expectation, 36%. And now let's see what is the reality that happened in a country at the time that I start my project. So this is the China reality. And the reality is not a fluid. So you see from the expectation in the US side and the reality that will be spent out, there is a discrepancy. So when a discrepancy like that happen, like that, what will happen next because of it? So now we are more clear that people are less patient to wait for 2-3 months. So I see very little. I see not a lot of state actually follow the 2 to 3 months to completely die down the virus like the curve in China. So we are in a different domain, a different curve. And so because of that, if we are like China, I really don't, am completely not very worried because at the end, even though I do a wrong job, I know that it go down and it will go down at some point in time. So I don't need to worry about anything. The only thing that I need to say maybe 2, 3 months and that's it. But because it's not like that, uh, it might be more worrisome for California, the place I live. So that's how I start my um, start to work on. So uh, let's see what in the chart here. You can see it's very interesting that the curve that I fit here fit to the China data, the Chinese data very well. At first, I'm kind of amazed, and then I doubt myself. I think that someone somewhere doctor the data so that it looked like the curve they want. So that's my first impression because I don't believe that I use when I use a very simple curve, I can actually fit the data. But then when Italy Spain start to go into the curve again, I start to see that it span out almost similarly. And so more and more believe that I actually can model the curve here for the disease well. At the same time, there people start also um, start to cite other model and base decision on that. At first, I think that's good. A lot of model, there will be good one and good decision based on that. But somehow, somewhere, I feel a little bit disappointed, and that's why I start my journey here. Um, so, uh, look at the picture. It is beautiful, uh, but you don't know about it when you first start. So just like me, I don't think that this is the path I'm gonna go uh, up until now. So I just try to know what is California situation. Do we have enough resource to deal with the COVID-19? What can we do then? But then I go on the path. It has joy when I found that the model worked pretty well. It has, I feel sad when people keep citing the wrong model. I feel nervous when my curve different than one of the other curve and say that it go up instead of go down. And for my place and some other place too, and some other place that I deeply care about it. So, um, but overall, um, I think at the end, when you look back, it's always beautiful. And in this journey, I have a lot of things. I have learned a lot of things. It's the first time I find my first domain, I ran some first VM, build my first website, and now it's the first time through the entirely life at LinkedIn. I actually very actively connect to people all over the world, just so that some people might actually see the model and use it later. So all of these is the first to me, except the modeling. But look at the picture; it's beautiful, and so that's why I want to talk today. I want to say about the journey today with all our data science fellow, uh, and say that yeah, with a good tool, you can have a good journey. So let me next demo the website. I have 2 links on this page because the first one, the one in the bottom is the one that I borrow the subdomain from my brother company. So he created, he's the CEO of the company. He has some domain that he can let me borrow and create the subdomain. But later on, I go on and create my own website in the first one. So, so let me start with the website here. So you can see that in the journey, if you start when you sometimes see that it goes through valley and it has a lot of dangerous step. If you might be don't know about it, you can go start lightly. If you know that it is dangerous, you have to have some kind of incentive to go. And here I want to provide a sneak peek into the end result so far up to now, so that you guys will follow with me on that journey. And so this is the website. It's quite simple. You can start to use either choose a country or choose a US state. So if you start a country, you can choose any country that available in the public domain from Johns Hopkins University. So it almost has every country. So my model is a very generic. It doesn't need to train for any specific country. So if you live in somewhere far, far away in the world, you still can use it. And if it has enough mortality to start to do the prediction, the curve will look well. Some country, especially for my home country in Vietnam, my friend complained that the model doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work because it has zero mortality so far. So I cannot model it. So let's start with, for example, the US here. So when you click run, it, oh, okay, so it run
There you
now.
go.
Thank you, everybody. Uh, you will know why it is like that near the end of the talk. So I will tell you more about the why of I use a cheap one, and also I choose this type of design. Um, but when you click run, it actually run a model underneath it, and it will fit the curve. Uh, there is a daily curve here with the lower bound and the upper bound. You will see some point that stay out of the lower bound and the upper bound. The main reason is because this is the bound after I do outlier detection. So you will know, the more you do this one, you will see that the uh, the the um, the death reporting is not perfect. So you will see some Sunday, Saturday number will go into the next Monday or Tuesday report in a lot of country. You also see like some place that one day, 1 or 2 days don't report and group everything into the other, like miscount and then recount. And even in some country, it can go to a negative death in a day. So there is on kind of the data issue in it. But I think using just a simple outlier detection and then a robust regression it can help solve that problem. And so our upper bound and lower bound mostly for the version after take out the outlier, and so it's a little bit smaller than the reality in the daily. But then when you go to the cumulative, mostly it will be a good one to catch. And underline it, it is the one I used to debug when I first built the model, because the model is very simple. Log daily death, and then I fit the two linear curve, and it connects at one point. That point is the 20-day. I hear my computer has a fan going on, so let me stop a few things to prevent it going into the dead mode before. I don't know, it never do that, but might be too many people watching and it's feel as worried as I am. So,
No worries.
wow.
Walk, are you later on going to talk about the regression model that you use?
Yes, I will. So this is just a sneak peek into how it works.
Great.
Uh, yeah, and then you can start to use with some other country. For example, if you want to check China, you have choose China and then run it. Yep. So as I tell you, the curve for China is perfect. Even the one in the log part, it is perfect. And if you run a back test to check for China, it is like case the power to predict might be uh, just about 20, 25 days after the lockdown happened. So it has a very long power, long prediction power. So let me try uh, with further away into might be the February 10th. So this is the into the February. It is not as good, but let's try it a little bit longer, a week after that. So this is the curve a week after that. So from the 28th, that means about a month after the lockdown, it already know kind of what is the curve later on. Uh, but then the more you go into the the stem, the curve will fit better and better. Like so, this is the one with about 2 months, 2 months in advance. But it doesn't matter that much because at this time, mostly we know the curve for China. So this is Italy. So this lockdown on 29. So if I choose the last day of data from the 13th of March, it doesn't look good. But then let's do for some time in April. April 16. Yep. So this is from the 16th up to now. Uh, it provide a good prediction power to go into the future. Yep, yeah, you guys can check a lot of other country, even some country that I far away and people don't put a lot of attention at the beginning, but it might be the country. So as I post on LinkedIn, this is the country I kind of worry because look at the cumulative that it has the potential to go very, very high. And look at the curve. Uh, you see, this is the line we get. It almost like that, and it has the power to predict like up to might be 2 4 weeks in advance. The curve will still be close to like the data from the 24th of uh, April. So you can see. So and then the model is actually doesn't know anything about Brazil. I don't put anything special about Brazil here, except for the only the lockdown date I get from Wiki. And then if you are a Brazilian, you know the exact time. You put the correct date here. You get a good model right away. And so on the website, there is also beside the predicted update. This is the one that I first start to view out at the beginning because I'm worried about the number of hospital bed and the number of ICU in a location. For example, in California, So this is on the projection of on the number that I kind of worry about in the daily part and also in the cumulative part. So this is viewed on desktop with mouse in mind. So it's easy when you use the mouse, you can see all of the number when you hover. You can click on a line to show it or not show it. So by default, the infected is invisible because it way ahead in it is in a different curve than the other. So if you put it in, on of the curve will go straight to zero, and you might not find it. If you want to see something like uh, you can double click, and then it only show that one, and then you can add more more light into it. So this is the plot, the interactive of the plot. Uh, so I have shown you that the prediction model is very simple, but if you go into try to predict the ICU and the hospital bed, it actually much harder and depend on the location. So in the case that you use it for planning, I strongly suggest you to use the advanced checkbox here. In the advanced checkbox, there is option to change the rate, and this will affect one of the other curve, the hospitalized curve, the asymptotic curve, and the infected curve. You also can change the time. This I rarely do because this mostly depend on the virus. But so the sum of it is 19 days. And I will show you later that almost every country, this number is 19. But in some country, the time you go to the hospital, the time from hospitalized to ICU is depend on the medical resource in that particular country. So I see some country, people go to the hospital much later. It's the US. And then there's some country people go to the hospital much earlier. So these are the one that you should change if you choose, if you know about your local scenario, healthcare scenario, this is the one to change. And even the time to discharge, like if you stay in the hospital for 5 days and you have not developed something, or 7 days you not develop something, then you might already been discharged in some country. But in some other country, they will keep you in the hospital for quite some time, even though you don't have a severe symptom that need the hospitalized. So all of these is not depend on the prediction, is not available in the prediction, except for just the sum of the first three term value, which is equal to 19. And that one, I will try to keep it the same, even if you change other thing. So there is also other function, like for example, a lot of statisticians want to do backtest, calculate on kind of error like math, maze, error prediction. If you choose show raw output data, you will have the option to see the raw number here. It's very helpful for me at the beginning because at the beginning my plot is very ugly. So I mostly look at the data. The data never lie. If I see something wrong like infinity, it's actually infinity from the model and something wrong in it. So easier for me to fix it. But when I plot, sometimes the infinity just drop and it has a nice plot and I don't see it. So this is my tool. And then you can also download the prediction here and do other calculation inside of your framework. So might be you only believe in my predicted death, but think my ICU, hospitalized, and all of the other thing is garbage. Just throw away all of the other thing. Just use the predicted death, lower bound, upper bound, and then using this column to provide your number for planning.
Is all this data from John Hopkins, or are you also referring to other course?
So on the confirmed case and the death data is from John Hopkins public domain. I myself gather a few of these before lockdown date. At first, I put it just today, and so like let the user choose the default. Um, the default based on their knowledge, because I think that it will be a very tedious task for us to do. But I discussed with my wife and I see like if it's not convenient enough, the user will not use it. So we decide that this is the task that we will choose from Wikipedia. They have a lockdown page that have a lot of country in it. And then there is a US page that I can get the US lockdown date. And sometimes I check with the IHME page to get the date too. So I create that under the data folder in my Git repo, so everybody can use it too. But beside that, everything is in public domain.
Great.
Yeah.
And did you create the visualization application by yourself, or is it an open source for analyzing data?
So I create these by myself. I have the help when I build the building using Streamlit. I will tell that furthermore in the talk. But the Streamlit tool is very helpful for me to build a website. And then the plot here just plotly. So the whole website and every code is in Python. So the repo is just Python, like no JavaScript. So very data science friendly. So some people, if you don't like JavaScript, and because of that, don't use the cannot build a website and communicate, I suggest try Streamlit here.
Do you cite the source of this data on the website, or?
Yes, so the data source, you can click on the GSU here. The code is in the GitHub here. So it is in public domain, and then all of the detail will be in this. When you check it, you will see all of the assumption. There is a very big Q&A style about the disease, and then very extensive reference that I found very helpful along the way I work on this project and also build the website and some of the interesting news and major changelog. Okay, so it's good on the demo of the website. I will come back sometime when you guys have questions. When you look at the forecasting model for COVID-19, you see the wrong model much more than the right model. So it's much more common, much more common than you think. It say in the website 538 here, it is actually really hard to model COVID-19. And you can go onto the link and see that it actually really hard. People try one of the method and try to throw on of the head in it. But there is a lot of mistake happen. So here I list the 4 types of mistake. The first one is we model on wrong data. The second one is we model without data or with very little of data and only use some kind of disease mechanism. The third one is in reverse of the second, that you actually only use data and pay little attention into the disease mechanism underneath it. And the third one, the last one is about overfit. The last one here, usually because of the previous three mistake, when you model wrong data, or you use don't have any data, or you only use data, your model is not good enough. And to compensate for not good model, usually people will increase the number of parameter or tuning the parameter too much so that it can fit the current data. But because of that, it will be not good to predict something in the future. So with that, let me go into the first one. Uh, the the Actually, I go in the reverse, a little bit reverse order. I go with the no data first. So for the no data, I displayed here the two headlines that you usually see on the news today. Uh, you see that this deadly headline, and then a few weeks later it disappears. You try to search it, you only see it on the Google engine, and then you click on that, the title already changed. Um, this is not forecast. To me, I call it simulation, and I call it simulation for a reason, because it's good to provide a few scenarios, but there's no way to use it and to know which scenario will actually happen in the future. And then because of that, cannot predict the future, even like cannot predict when it happened. Like even you say that the future, and then someone asks, is it 6 months from now, 2 months from now, 1 month from now, what the number is. These scenario simulation cannot provide it. And then it's very easy to get misused, and people can use it for their higher or lower scenario based on their own agenda. So that is the issue. So I have an example here with the one that people use the most, and and I also see the most, and I also plan to use it too. I will tell you why I plan to use it here, but I say it is one of the common mistakes. The reason is because of the model. If you see in the slide here, this is the game of 8 parameters. And if you read carefully what is these 8 parameters, you will see that this parameter is very location specific, very hard to know beforehand, and have very little data to help you estimate it. Couple that with the system of 4 differential equation here, and then the total equation at the end, you have all way to overfit the data, but there's no way to check if you have little data right at the beginning. So I have to remind everyone working on this topic, but I might be, I don't need to remind because everyone already know. It's just because this is the tool they have to work with, or this is the tool they are more familiar with, or because they have to provide some kind of uh, uh, prediction or simulation, I say, at the beginning when no data available. So first, this is a very new virus. So a lot of parameter we cannot reuse from anywhere else. And then location variation is very hard to get, especially the initial number, because as for example in the US, even initial infected, we don't know what day it actually happened. So at the beginning we think this day, a few weeks later we have new research and we have to backtrack the number. And so all of the scenario we provide have to be revised and redo again, and it completely changed everything in this differential equation system. And then it also like if you see the equation, it only works for a closed system, a closed population. It doesn't work for a very open system when people from one state go to the other state, people in one county go to the other county, and you don't have a clear boundary that our end here is only applied to that county and no one come from other place. And so I don't get infected from other location come to the location that I try to do the prediction here. So that's really hard. And I actually really admire anyone that brave enough to use this model to make the forecast for COVID-19. If they do it right, they have a very powerful model, and they are the master of not just the forecasting, but also the master of the system, like very complicated system. Um, but at the beginning, I think it's really hard. But near the end, I will tell you that I actually have to study this very careful because I really need it near the end because my model doesn't work forever. It especially doesn't work when a significant the population I try to make forecast for is already infected and become a significant number in the population. So I cannot uh, ignore these complicated but correct model for modeling the disease. So I have to use it at some point in time. Um,
So how did you define those 8 parameters? Did you arbitrarily select them, or are they inferred from the data?
no, this is not my model. So this is a very common, famous
Mm,
epidemiology model. I actually have to ignore this model at the beginning because I have no data to do anything with it. But I know that there is serious effort to use this model to do the prediction. And as I said, it's really a nightmare for a lot of modeler, and
mm.
they really pray to work on it.
So how did those authors define that, though? Those 8 parameters?
I think if you can see in the chat log or the raise your hand, hopefully there is the expert in the um, uh, especially the medical field or people that work on this model. I
Got it.
think they know much more. So
Okay.
if you see any hand raise, because I have I exactly say I have very little knowledge about this one and how to estimate these parameters. The best that I can estimate in this model is actually just the sigma.
Okay.
Not exactly the sigma. I estimate with the data. I estimate the whole part of this. Yeah. So like I try to estimate this as a constant. So very simple compared to this one.
Got it.
So the second one is the about the wrong data. So I give an example here with the Kaggle challenge. Here they already have up to week 5 challenge. Every week people will submit the model, try to predict the confirmed case and the fatality. Um, the fatality is good. The confirmed case, I don't think it is a good idea. Um, you will see that when you look at my website uh, and you run and you see the cumulative number, the confirmed case has all shape and nature and doesn't has any confirmed shape that you can do. So in each country, it will be a different confirmed curve. And even in the same country, the same state, the curve change over time because of the testing capacity is open. So you will have a very good model at the beginning with this confirmed case curve, and then suddenly the testing change. Your confirmed case come from a different domain, and then your prediction become not usable anymore. So by this effort from try to model the confirmed case, I think we waste a lot of research effort and waste a lot of researcher attention. So I am a little bit worried about using the confirmed case. But I also think that the more we do, there is some way to actually address for using the confirmed case. For example, using it together with the positive, the ratio of positive tests when you do testing, and then you can adjust, and that confirmed case will be consistent if, um, at least in the same location that you do the modeling. But then the issue is you cannot borrow the data from, for example, China to go into your model because their confirmed case might be very different from your confirmed case. So it's really hard. The second type of wrong data is death per capita. So this one I don't see it wrong, but it create extra challenge into your modeling because there is some city that with huge population is the number of death in the 10 or the 100, but because you use the death per capita, it will be a very close number to zero, and so your modeling it will be struggle. But if you only use the death number, it's just normal, just anywhere else. So your model will work for that area without any issue. So I also suggest don't do the debt per capita. So if Kaggle do something, I suggest next time they remove the confirmed case and just do the fatality, and maybe adding some more important thing like the ICU or the hospital bed needed, because that really the thing that will help the policy maker to make a better decision. And so the next one is the other extreme case when people kind of ignore the disease fundamental and go with the data. They might go with the data from other country and think that it will work for our country or it will work for a state in some state in the US. And this is an issue. And this is an interesting issue because if we are data scientists, this is the kind of thing that in our nature, that the first thing we do is we crack the data, just take the data, throw in the model, see if it fit well. But for forecaster, I suggest you to always looking for this type of error, because if you try to explain something, it's still okay. But if you want to forecast something using just the data and fit the curve that fit well with the data, will create issue for you when you use your model for forecasting. So this is a model choice issue, and this is observed in a lot of places. And I have two examples here. One is an example of California, and then one kind of famous model that tried to predict the California death. And the curve I do, and the one I take a screenshot here is I think around May 2nd, so not long ago. But you see the curve. It's very interesting that it will go to zero death in May 17th. The reason, because it used the China curve. The China curve has a going up and a going down, and it has a period to go up and period to go down. So in every state and country, this model will have a going up and going down, and the time is kind of the same, just with something. But at the end of the day, the model will force the curve to go down. So that's a very serious problem. And if you compare it with the prediction on my curve, you will see that it will very different. So this is California. I care most about this one because this is where I live, but you will try it in the place that uh, you are living. I think it better because you have more knowledge. So here the daily log depth and the curve look like that. So it with this one, if you fit a curve, it can go up, it can go down, but the down is very little. And when that happens, your curve cannot go down drastically like China. China is a very different story. Their policy for lockdown is much more severe. So you cannot apply the same thing to US state curve. Doesn't work. Just doesn't work. Uh, so that is one of the example, that example will create in a lot of state. And if you know about the model well, it severely underpredict until very lately. I think we updated um, on I think May 4th, a few days after I took this screenshot. um, but I say it here because I still see the model has issue. And now instead of this kind of issue, it will have the four type of issue of overfit. And so it will show when you go longer into the future because the predictive power, it will be very less for this kind of curve. And if a few days that they don't update the data, you go and see their observe and they predict, you will see a strong disconnection between these. The second example, you see that one, that is a very interesting one. It will provide you one up and down because it has the alpha which control the maximum number that the death happened or the confirmed case happened. And so, and there is a beta that it will dictate how the slope going down or going up. And then fit this curve into your data, you can make the curve look like it has a peak and it will go down at some point. And so you can fit the curve really well with your current data, but it will tell you, not tell you most, will not tell you a lot about the future because the big term will be wrong and the Dow will be, the Dow curve might never happen within the time frame that you fit this kind of curve. And it has some extra issue that forecaster usually aware of and will try to avoid in all the time is that as you see on the example here with the example here with the red curve, the uncertainty actually go to zero, the confidence band go to zero in the future. With forecaster, it never happened. The more you go into the future, the less you know about your forecast. So you actually go wider and never can go to zero. Like it's very hard to go to zero because the more you go further and further, your forecast uncertainty get higher and higher, and you less certain about your number. You cannot be more certain 2 weeks in now because I use a prediction curve to do the forecasting.
Would this example fall into the wrong data category then?
It is not the wrong data because they choose the depth to do the forecasting. It's actually not to try to model the wrong data. It's more like only use data and ignore the epidemiology fact of the disease or the underlying model that create your data. So,
so which model did you use for making this curve?
So I don't know. The researcher from that provide this model can tell you more. If you go into their site, You can read more about that.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, but from my first, when I first read it, and I think it's still good for this curve, it's some kind of logistic curve,
Mm.
and it will also very similar to the one on the right side also, that
Okay.
will have some kind of big, some kind of go down, and the go down is depend on your time from now to the time you start to build the model, which from my observation doesn't capture the nature of this disease, which is the curve only change when the policy change. So then I go to the last one, and even though I already said it in the previous one, here it's more easier to demonstrate. If you can see in the chart, it has a few versions of a model that try to predict the black one. So it starts from the blue, it go to the yellow, it then go to the green, and finally it go to the red, and then the brown and the purple is the latest upper bound and the lower bound. From this chart, you will see that the curve jump on over the place, and the change in each of the model is just 1 to 3 weeks, and you see the curve change completely. And this is if you do a lot of um, problem with prediction, you know that this is the overfit when the curve fit well for this current set of data, but because our model choice is not good enough, it doesn't fit well into the future. So there is a couple guardrail to prevent it. You can use cross validation, any type of cross validation. If you do normal prediction or classification, but if you do for forecasting, backtest is another tool that people use extensively to know that, okay, my model work now. If I fit only a small amount of data in the past, can it still fit well now? And then doing backtest and backtest like that, you can know that the model that you derive is actually a good one and can predict into the future using the backtest performance. But it also has some caveat that it cannot go on forever. Every forecast has some kind of like legitimate forecast horizon and will be overfit for a long period of time because it doesn't know some new thing that introduced into the system. And so any forecast has, I think, the time to live factor in it, and it only valid for quite some time. I cannot say my model good forever. The best I can say, it might be good for a few weeks, a month, and it helped to make the decision based on the validity, the time validity of a model. Show the backtest of a few model in our website first before we jump into the model. So here you can run the backtest using this one, and you can choose a date, and it can provide kind of like the model with just the last data point is the one you choose there, and you can see just the model with the last doesn't have the last 2 days of data, provide a good one for this 7 day of data, and you can try to see how far it can go into the past, and you can check a lot of country, a lot of state, and see how well some model, some of how well does it work. And so if you can have a lot of time to play with the website, and that's the reason I built the website, because I cannot talk forever about any place, any country, any state, and you can play with it yourself, and you can make your decision based on the model, how you see it. So that's I really open. I really like the idea of reproducible research. I don't want a black box. I want something that people can see it, replicate it, play with it, and then make something different with it if they see something wrong. Uh, so Sienna asked me if you see any question on the raised hand.
So far, no one's raised their hands yet, but there may be a
Uh-huh.
few questions coming through soon.
Yep, that's interesting. So let I speed up a little bit. We are close. So this is the model, and it's very simple. As you can see it from the chart on the right, it is two lines connect at one point that called the cut point, and the cut point is the time of lockdown, adding 19 days, and the 19 day come from, as I explained before. The lockdown date is an input from the user, so it has three more parameters for each location: the intercept, the slab of the before light, the slab of the after light. And that is the log of daily day. And so very simple. Um, uh, why this simple model and why it works? This is the curve of China. At first, when I do it, I think China factor the number because it's just cannot that easy to model. But then when other data coming back and it still follow the same thing, the 19 day after lockdown, it changed to another curve. I totally believe that it actually cracked the get the right model. Um, and then so in order to know if to develop this model, I actually have to go very deep into the domain knowledge, because like every forecaster, like a data scientist can work on data, but if you want to forecast into the future, you really need to know the underlying mechanism. You need to learn the public, the domain that you try to make the forecast. So I know well about sales forecast, but if, for example, if I try to do power forecast, might be I cannot do as well as my wife would do it a lot. And I'm also a novice in like stock forecast. And same here, when I first do the disease forecast, I think I have to learn a lot. So if you look at my site and the reference, like most of the reference is from the medical field, because I read a lot of them just to make sure that I understand the mechanism of this disease in order to provide a good model.
Have you done any of the models with business metrics as compared to COVID-19 shelter at home orders?
Can you clarify more?
Um, I guess it says, have you done any models with the business metrics as compared with COVID-19 shelter at home orders? I'm assuming how the at home orders have affected these businesses.
I have to say that it's much more difficult than
Okay.
the DD. I haven't done that. I actually not authorized to speak about that, even if I model it before. But to be honest, I haven't done that. So, but from my understanding about the economy system, it's much more difficult than one disease here. I can model like there's a lot of disease that I can model. This one particularly, I'm lucky. Uh,
Mm.
but for and then for business, I actually there's a lot of things I don't know. So if I want to do business forecasting, I will have to spend enormous amount again. And
Yeah.
still might be cannot do any better than other experts in the field already. So I,
No worries. So I guess in terms of prediction then, would you be able to explain or further clarify how the model predicts the inflection point corresponding to the increase of number of deaths approximately 1 month from beginning of the graph?
so here the underlying epidemiology theory. So at first, it's the 19 days mostly come from the China paper that they have on of the date from the date infection to hospitalized, from hospitalized to ICU, and ICU to death. They document very well. You can see on my reference. So I start with that day, with that 19 day, work well for the China case, and then it worked well for everywhere else. So I suppose they know about it well enough. Then after that, the cut point is clear. Then why it is the two linear curve there. So the first thing I do is I think, okay, my friend said that this is a very contagious disease. Like the Chinese friend that just come back from China say it's more contagious than people in the US think of. So I think, okay, for contagious disease like this, it's mostly just exponential growing. So you see the equation. Here the death is the proxy for the daily infected case 19 days ago. So assume 19 days ago, there is some people that is infected. Then 19 days after that, there will be some people that is dead, and that related directly to the infection there. So here I look at just the infection. So the curve here for the death will actually draw from the infection. So for infection, it's very easy. So the infection at time t is A time with the number of people that is infected at time t minus 1. So one day you get 8 more, the factor of 8 people more infected on that dt, and that's the daily one. And if you write it down recursively, you will have dt is the exponential curve after t, so b to the b times with a to the t. And then you take the log, it becomes just the linear. So that's why the log daily death is just a linear curve with a fixed slope, and that fixed slope is the same until there is some policy change or the behavior change from the people that know about the disease. So that's interesting that the first time you do the lockdown, the curve will go on for the next 19 days because it just exposed the previous 19-day infection. So the curve is completely like that, not policy related curve. So the first slope of the curve is always fixed very well. And then the second one, now it depends on the people behavior. So I see a lot of place when they're consistent in the lockdown policy, the curve is just like that. You can check for China, you can check for a lot of states in the US. Just one line after the infection point. But the line will be different depending on the policy that you use. So that's why a lot of the model that try to predict these two sections of the curve together by a logistic curve will just fail because they only have one beta in it to direct the curve and cannot allow that it changed to a different curve because the policy changed. But there is a limitation here because if in some state that or in some country it actually changed the policy every few days, like they go onto the lockdown a week, they see it doesn't work, they see it doesn't work, they think the lockdown doesn't work, so they go stricter, they go stricter. It actually make my model become horrible because might be just not that it doesn't work. You don't see it. You only see it 19 days after your lockdown take effect. But because you change the slope 5 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, the second line might be actually not one line, but a few lines because you have a few significant policy change date. And in that case, have to fit like multiple line. And I don't like that because it opened the gate for overfit. And because of that, you will have very perfect curve because you introduce a few inflection point, a cut point. But then you have no way to know like in the future what is the curve gonna look like, so it cannot go far in the future. In that, I suggest if you can ignore the previous part of the curve, only care about the future, then you use the latest day with the policy locked out on that location. It will provide you the right curve, the last part correctly, and might be wrong in the sum of the previous one, but still okay to make the prediction in the daily one.
I see.
Mhm.
So we actually, there's a couple of people with hands raised. You want to take some questions now or?
Yes, please.
Great. How about Alan Milligan? Oh, can you, I believe he's unmuted.
I still see he's mute from my side.
Alan, are you there? Okay, if not, Anaki, I believe, or Anakel.
So might be you. Yeah.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yep, we can hear
Hello.
you.
Yes, my question is, I mean, it's a linear regression model, right? Because it uses basically two kind of different slopes. But I was curious to know what exactly kind of package, or what is the name exactly of a model which allows for two slopes and a breaking point?
Yep. So at first I start with just do the two line using robust linear regression. It doesn't work well because the light does not connect. Later on, I found the package called BW Visual Linear Regression. I have it in the reference on my site that it worked very well. It has a lot of options to say that I want the cut count exactly at that, and then you will have the two count. And it has more than what I use, but for what I use, it worked perfectly. The only thing I add into it is I add some extra thing to do pseudo inverse, because in the package it only have the normal inverse, and sometimes it doesn't work for my data. So I add kind of I change one small thing in the package, but mostly that curve work. And I add some robust regression at the beginning to filter out the outlier. So for China here, without filter out the outlier, a few days that misreporting the number happened, the curve will not look good. But after filter out the outlier using the robust linear regression, then the PWLS will provide a good curve.
Okay, thank you.
And Baber?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Robert?
Yes, thank you very much for this terrific presentation. I guess I have just a kind of final summative question. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, we have all these models, we have all these data. Which model, which course of action do you think is the right way to proceed for our country, given all the data and all the modeling that you've done? Which one has the best evidence?
Yeah, so I think actually there are two strategies that a few places use. The first one is cross it, like China or Vietnam or South Korea try to do. That you want to let the curve go down completely and protect your community by not letting any newcomer come. So you will have a strict enforcement on the inflow so that you don't have new case. This will be very hard when more and more countries have the disease, so you cannot stay isolated forever until the disease over. So this is a very brave hard choice for some place. The second one is that, and that is actually happening in the US now, is people try not to cross it, but try to flatten the curve. So if you see my purpose of the site at the end is if we do some kind of lockdown, relockdown with the right tool, can we always have our resource above the needed capacity. And so that another strategy that people can go through, waiting for the time herd immunity happen, or a vaccine happen, or the a cure appear. So the first camp about CRUSIT, they have a high hope that something like that will happen. And so if that happens, they perfectly fine, don't have any, don't have a lot of debt. At the same time, don't have a lot of they don't have to wait forever to open to the world again. But that still waiting, like all of the scientists is working to having that kind of answer. So the two choice, I don't know, like it's very hard choice. I'm not a politician, so I know it hard. I don't know how much, how hard it be. I cannot imagine. I know it's really hard.
Well, I have no doubt that you might figure it out. So when you do, we'll have another conversation. Another presentation.
Yep, not that easy, Papa.
All right, and the last question comes from actually one of our own from the boot camp. Carlos, are you there?
Yes.
Thanks.
So actually, I noticed there was an earlier question about the model parameters. How do we know those? So if you want, I can say a few words how those model parameters are determined. Actually, it would be helpful if you could show your initial slide, which had all the model parameters. If you could show that slide more in the beginning. I'll just say a few words about how do we get those parameters. I've worked with models like this in the past. I'm no expert, but from working with them in the past, I've known how one gets those parameters. Yes.
Okay,
So for example, the one that may be easier to understand, it's that mu, which is the mortality rate. So it may be easier for most people to understand that the mortality rate is going to be the ratio between the number of people who die divided by the total number of people who got the disease. That's probably the simplest one to start with. And so you can see that this is a property of the disease, right? How aggressive, what's the fatality of the disease, how many people die from those that get the disease. And from here alone, you can see the importance of getting data and the importance in this case of doing testing, because you need to know how many people are dying, and knowing how many people are dying is easier than knowing how many people are getting the disease. You need to know both things, how many are dying and how many are getting the disease. Those who die is easier to know, unfortunately, because they cannot choose dying or not. They will die, and you'll eventually found those people dead. And if you are able to test if the death was related to disease or not, that's more easy to measure. But then particularly challenging with this situation was having enough tests to test enough people so we know how much of the population is really getting the disease. So you really know how many people are infected. If you don't have that testing capacity and that data, then you'll have a more true number for the deaths, but a number for the infected that may be much lower than the reality. And in that case, you'd be estimating a mu parameter, which would be higher than the reality. So mu is a good example. Mu is a good parameter to show the meaning. It's a parameter that reflects the nature of the disease, how fatal that disease is, how many people it kills from those that infects. And it shows the importance of collecting good data. In this case, doing enough testing to get to the point where you have a more realistic information of how many people are getting the disease. Another interesting parameter would be the beta. So the beta, it kind of measures the transmission rate between those who have the disease and those who don't. And it is a mixture of both properties of the disease and properties of the population, of the society, because it's going to be the product of two things. The product of how often people meet each other times the probability of people transmitting the disease to each other each time they meet. So one thing is the property of the society, how often people interact within that society. The other is the property of the disease. What's the probability of it transmitting between a contact of two people? Okay? And you can see that in this beta parameter is where we are trying to control by asking people to stay home. When you ask people to stay home, you are trying to reduce the beta parameter by reducing the part of the beta parameter which is due to the society behavior. You cannot control the probability of transmission between one person to the other, right? If people get in contact and one sneezes, there's a certain probability of the other person getting the disease. What you can control is people not getting together. So that parameter is the one in the model that accounts for the fact, are we leaving people just move freely as usual, or are we asking people to control the movement so that we reduce the interaction factor, reduce the number of people, the number of times people interact with each other. So those are two good examples. What's the meaning of the parameters and where we get the data. So we get the data from the data that we are getting at the time from the disease, from measuring the testing, how many people are getting disease and so on. Sometimes you don't have data for all of these parameters at the time for that new disease. So what you do, we go to the epidemiology research from diseases similar in the past, and you try to use those parameters from the tests that were done, studies that were done in the past, and you try to use those as your initial parameters for your new model, for the new disease. And then sometimes your model will have some freedom, and you'll use that freedom to try to adjust those parameters. It's kind of a calibration phase of the model where you try to calibrate we start with some initial values for all the parameters, and you try to calibrate your model so that you can find the values of those parameters that are not too far from the initial value, because you know that initial value is a good guess, but you adjust those parameters to the point that the model you get better reflects the new data that you have. So these parameters are properties of the disease and the society. Sometimes you have data for them, sometimes you don't. When you don't have, you go to other studies and you get those values as initial values. That's why one can use values for some of these parameters from another country and start to use it for a different country as an initial step. And depending on the model, you may have the freedom to try to adjust and calibrate the model to adjust those parameters still.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. I think from that, you also demonstrate well what I tried to present previously about how complicated this model is, especially the IFR, which is still unknown. The number of real infected is still unknown. How to model the interaction between people in a society is really hard. And then this is a new disease, a new virus, that your assumption from the other virus might be broken. And then when you try to bring data from previous or other location into your location, a lot of data doesn't work because how your society interact is very different from another society interact. And so it say all about all the things that can go wrong. And at the same time, because you have very limited data, but we really like to model it, we will adjust the parameters so that it fit our data and then to go into the overfit problem. So I completely understand the mindset here.
Great, yeah, thanks, Carlos.
Can you unmute Alan in case he can ask me the question later? I know he's delayed from London to wait for asking the question.
Yeah, I think we tried to unmute him. I don't know. Alan, can you hear us out there? We're not sure why it's not working, but there are a couple more questions. So I think Jednia, are you there? I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly. Great, yeah, I can hear you.
Great. There's one piece of this in terms of forecasting that I've been thinking about, but I haven't collected any data to try to see if it could play a role, and that's population density. And so my question is I have a couple questions here. First, has population density been taken into account with popular COVID-19 forecasting models? And the second piece, if it has, how granular has that population density data that is used? For instance, if you look at a country like Russia, just a couple of cities that have high population density in the rest of the country is basically like extremely rural, compared to a country like England, or the Northeast region of the United States that has quite a kind of constant population density that seems to play a role of some sort.
Yeah, so the beauty of this model is that it kind of ignore that one because the slope here is depend on a lot of factors. Population density is one of them. Temperature of the location is another. The mode of transportation in the local is another one. And then do you understand the airborne transmission behavior of the virus or not, like of the population? Do they wear masks or not is another. So what I see when I fit the slope here, I never have the density population or use it to enhance the model. But what I see is that location that is close to each other usually has a very similar change in the slope between slope 1 and slope 2 after they put the same policy in. So for sure that this, because they are in the same local, a lot of factors the same. At the end, the beta 2 minus beta 1 is almost similar, but I'll never break it down to actually predict the beta 2, beta 1 based on of the other factor like temperature, or because it opened the gate for overfit there. And I think also like our team is only have 2 people working on this. I cannot look at every location and try to integrate one of these and try to get the data without the data ahead of time. So mostly the data will tell me what the beta is instead of go deeper into that granularity.
Okay, and just for time's sake, I know there's a lot of you guys that may have additional questions still, but one I saw in the chat. So your overall takeaway, Quoc, would you say, did you have any specific insights or anything while doing the project? I think you may be talking about it in a few other slides.
Yeah, in a few other slides I will go
Awesome.
But first I go strictly the projection of other. You can see it from my website. I try very detailed, and if you like read in the code, it's very clearly, but everything is derived from the mortality, the death, the infected, the hospital bed, the ICU, the symptomatic or the hospitalized is all derived from the death. And the confirmed case usually stay between the symptomatic and the hospitalized curve, like very well everywhere. In a place that is stay in the hospitalized curve, we will go on forever. The curve will be flat but not go down. In a place that it can go, the confirmed case is go near the symptomatic case, we have a curve that go down pretty well. And then if you can go up near the infected case, you have a very high chance to eliminate the disease and cross it. The second one I want to emphasize a lot of time. And if you forget everything about this one, please remember this one. The lockdown is very important. When you do the fitting, you can see it very crucial. You put the right one, you have the right curve. You put the wrong one, you have the wrong curve right away. You can try it on my website. The second one is the policy impact of it. So for example, with this curve, if you go a few days earlier, the second slope, even though the policy is the same, the second slope will be a little bit lower than the current slope. And because of that, your total death will be lower. But you know, health is always stay together with the economy. So sometimes there is sacrifice, sometimes there is trade-off between how late can I wait to do the lockdown. And so one thing I want to say here is the lockdown is very important. It can change the curve. It can change the curve at this state for the lockdown, and it can also change the curve in the relaxed phase. And the model tell you exactly that 19 days after a policy change, the curve will shift to another curve. And that another curve actually is much easier in the relaxed phase, because we know we go up the most as is the first curve, and we go down the most as in the second curve. That's it. So the third curve is just like that. And I can I build a tool to do that too. But I haven't put into the website because I don't want the user. It already died, so let me skip that part. But I will explain. It is a simulation that you can put in the lockdown, put in the relaxed state, put in the capacity, the constraint percentage, and the testing percentage, and then you will make a new curve using the current one, and then you can evaluate if your capacity is below the red line or not, because you don't want that the upper bound reach the capacity constraint in your state or your country, because that will create a lot of trouble. You will cannot treat the patient well. The hospital will be overwhelmed, and then more patient, more doctor will be infected, and more people will die. And because of the capacity hit, it can has all sorts of problem that you don't want to have in your place. And so this is the last kind of the last interesting one I want to say about the journey that we are going right now, that kind of like try to explain today. I go through it through iterative development. So this is what I learned from working alongside with our software engineer. So first thing is I build MVP, always a most viable product first, to see if it actually worth the time to invest further. I will try to get usage, to give users to get feedback. That means I get user on board to it sooner, and then get the feedback from them to develop a better product. A lot of my friends constantly argue with me and provide good feedback. So the end product here is also kind of like the end result from all of these question and answer and improvement. So feedback is very important, and try to get it as soon as you can with your MVP. I try to keep it lean because I don't have any budget to run this one. So I run it on a machine that is $15 a month, a very small VM. I buy a very cheap domain to run it. And I plan, like, if I see more usage, I will add more. But I will start first, always first with the lean possible thing that I can do and still have a product that is helpful. And then because it very the thing is high, you have to predict it timely to get people use it. So I have to prioritize all the tasks based on my on the feedback and my resource. I try to solve the most critical problem in the model in the UI first based on my resource. Some problem is critical, but it's too difficult for me to crack it at the right time. I have to delay, like just like the SEIR. But I hope that with a lot of help from you guys today, I can understand it more and then can integrate it into the last part of the curve, would I still not feel very comfortable, the relaxed phase. And then I try to keep everything timely and time boxed. So I know that tomorrow or a few days from now, I need something, I need that, and then I just cut the port into that port. So that's how I can kind of like provide the presentation here, but also at the same time improve the website so that it is usable. But I have to delay a few important tasks so far. That is writing because to me in the industry, I value the usage more than the citation, but it has some limited. If I only do a website like this, I tell to one of you guys, might be one of you guys will believe me and tell somebody else, but it is a limited reach. So if I can collaborate with somebody and put it in the peer review work and then get the academia looking at it, then might be the force become bigger and bigger. But at this time, I actually have to prioritize the product more than the writing. But I hope with a lot of people coming today to the talk, we'll have more collaboration later. And also the model is on the code, is on GitHub. So feel free to use it, run it, create new UI, create new model, and do all sort of thing with it. It is in the public domain. I really like that, and I really see the opportunity for all of our fellow here to do some interesting thing out of it. And I hope that after today's talk, more people know about this one, more people from more country know it, and then get use it, and then might be actually build it into some tool that can actually affect the policy or help the policymaker to make the decision. The journey here, it just, I don't know where it is in the path, but it's not end yet. It ends when the COVID-19 ends. I hope, or because of something else that I have to end it early. But I hope to continue working on that with more help from all of the friends and people that know about it now. And thanks a lot for NYC Data Science Academy to host the talk today. And that's coming to my last slide too. The first thank you beside to the NYC Data Science Academy is the data, public report data. So to me, as a data scientist, without data, I'm not even a scientist. So with the public data from Johns Hopkins, it opened all the opportunity for people to do modeling. And then I feel right for me, because it's first time I build a website, Streamlit is especially good tool to use, very easy to pick up. It took about 1 week for me since I started the project. When I first started, I don't know Streamlit. And that is the end of the talk. There are a long list of people or tool reference. I cannot say all of them. You guys can read it on my reference page.
Yeah, thank you again. I know most of you are muted, but claps to you. Thank you so much, Quoc. We really appreciate you sharing this information and all the advice. And like you said, these events are exactly what you're trying to encourage collaboration, and that's something that we definitely stand behind. Our next event actually is gonna be centered around how data science kind of plays a role in financial risk management. And again, you're welcome to attend. Anyone here, that's our next public event. That'll be on June 5th. But again, I know some of you may still have additional questions, so feel free to submit them on the feedback form, as well as feel free to reach out to Quoc himself. I think he said LinkedIn is a good way to connect. But if you have any other additional questions, let us know. Again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you again, Quoc, for all the great insights.
I'm open
yeah.
to stay a little bit longer if it's not a hassle for the team.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. We can stay on for a few minutes longer.
Yep, so are there any hand raised or any question that have not asked yet? I can answer on the question.
Yeah, there seems to be one, Tom Brown. Are you there? Tom?
Unmute myself. Hi.
Awesome. Hi, thanks for joining us.
This is great in terms of taking a look at a first wave of infection. One of the concerns, if we don't do a great job of continuing to keep the lockdown and infection control in place, we'll get a second and possibly even a third wave if we take a look at the 1918 example. have you started thinking about this model from that we relax too quick point of view?
So let me show you. I actually do that step already. So that what I'm worried about is the relaxed phase, and the curve will go up again. One good thing is the modeling framework is the same. So you get one more cut point, and when you have data, you can start to see the future, far into the future after 4 days when the relax take effective. So for example, let me.
Like right now, for example, Florida and Georgia are relaxing. Maybe not enough days yet to see anything in the data.
Not enough days yet, but I have contact with a few people from Georgia, and they are very patiently looking for the next 2-4 days to see with it what is the data tell us. Yes, and then you can do relockdown again if it is.
How did you get that second bump in your curve?
Yep. So okay, have you seen my slide yet? Yep. Good.
Well, it's now off the top of the screen here, but.
Okay, let me. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is a little tool I built to demonstrate the testing, and demonstrate how the relax should be. It has this forward CICT, which is capacity, incident containing, and testing. So capacity is about the capacity that you don't want to hit, and one of the other is parameter that you can change. So let me change, for example, I will do more containing. So the curve will not go up, but will go kind of like this. So the first curve hit the capacity.
Yeah.
So you relax it at some point, for example, in July, if you this one will hit, and then you have to do lockdown, might be 19 days before that day to not hit the curve, and it keep going. So unless we reach the herd immunity soon, this is the tool that everybody need to use to actually time the re-lockdown after we do the relax, or watch for what is the thing gonna be in the future.
Is this tool been made available on your website, aipert.org, or is that something that you might do in the future?
I am testing the UI for it right now because I don't want to confuse the user about a forecast and a simulation. So this is a simulation and it's not a forecast. So I have to kind of like split the user out to know that this is not my forecast about the future. This is a tool for simulation. And for that, you can kind of mimic the containing is somehow, for example, if you say 100% mean you lock down 7 days a week, then you say if you lock down only 5 days a week and then 2 days you get people go loose, then it might be like about 30-40% or 60% containment. So you can use this one to see what is the curve gonna look like for that. Or you can use the testing because the more you test, the confidence band will be
the confidence interval,
will be smaller and smaller. So at least you're up about, you're closer to the real number and not hit the curve too soon than the real number. So this one will be helpful. And then you can hypothesis when you do that, and you can provide a forecast horizon. So this tool is available. I prioritized the talk today before I put it into the website.
That's okay. No, thank you. This is super interesting and helpful.
And as I said before, when I first put it, it will not be perfect. And so your usage and your feedback will help me a lot to make it better.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then I think another question from Andre Koch. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Hi, Andre.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Quoc. Actually, it's hard. I think it's hard to find more interesting and more important topic these days for the data science talk. So I have two questions. First, when you're predicting the number of deaths, are you using moving average before autoregressing? And the second, have you compared like the your performance of your model to the similar regression models?
So I will answer these two questions. The first one is about the average. Yes, I use it because it will solve the issue of a Saturday and Sunday low report, and then Monday and Tuesday high report. So a moving average will have solved that issue. And also it solved the issue for a couple of places that the number of death is kind of discrete, that you have one day, one death one day, a few days with 0 death, and then 1 day of death and a few more days of death. So for example, Singapore is one of these examples at the beginning. So using the moving average, we can kind of fix that problem. Not perfect, but still fix that problem. The second question, I forgot. Can you repeat again?
Yes. Have you compared your performance to similar models for this?
Yeah, so I actually only compare it closely with a very famous model. I kind of like don't want to say the name of that model out in public, but I found it worked very well compared to that model. And that is actually my inspiration to work on this project right at the beginning, because at the beginning I have a model. My wife run it on a Jupyter notebook and just check the number every day. But when I see it work very well and I want people to see it, I found people start to cite that famous model, but keep providing wrong forecast because of one of the error I highlight in this talk. So I know it worked better than that one. It worked better than any simulation model, any like kind of like scenario model that use the SEIR so far. I don't find anyone work well yet. And then I found a lot of mathematical model that doesn't have any prediction power. It fit the data well after you put in like 4 or 5 parameter with some weird equation. Does not relate to any disease specific disease theory. So it doesn't tell anything about the future.
Okay, thank you.
But you can do it yourself too. Like if you know any model, you can like get this model, get the raw number, do a back test, or do a future test if you run it now and have the patient to wait for a few weeks to check. It's good too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely play with your website, with your model. Yeah.
Great. And I think last question is one of our own students. Seth, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Thanks for staying on a little longer.
Yeah, so first I'd like to say, I appreciate your efforts to figure out this virus, because to me, its properties seem like it's very data science resistant. Right? Like the fact that people can infect others for 2 days with no symptoms, like who thought of that? You know, this is just a tactical nightmare. So I appreciate you guys trying to wade through this mess and figure out what's going on here. But so my question's related to the death rate. Earlier it was mentioned that it was calculated just by taking the number of people infected and dividing it by the number of deaths. But there isn't just one mortality rate, because the probability of surviving the virus changes greatly depending on a number of factors. Like three I know off the top of my head are race, gender, and age, right? Like those variables can dramatically alter the probability. So how do you account for that in your model?
Yeah, so I have to say that I'm kind of lucky at the beginning, because my death is, the death curve is actually modeled based on these IFR. So my projection for the mortality is immune from the strong assumption. But then any other projection for the infected number, for the symptomatic hospitalized, ICU, and hospital bed is wrong when I use the wrong IFR coming from China, which at the time is 2.3. So later on, I have to revise it to 1% using the Grand Princess number, which is a closed population that can provide a very good estimate for the IFR. But then it's still not correct, because the people on the Grand Princess is much older than the population in other locations. So that number is still high. And so recently I make more update using the data from the Oxford page to estimate the global IFR, and also the prevalence study coming from New York, Santa Clara, and then Florida. So their estimated is about between 0.1 and 0.41. And I choose the one that is 0.36 right now, which comes from Germany. And it seems like after I use that one, my number which relate to the hospital bed, the ICU use is very close to the observed data that is that you can find on the University of Minnesota page, which I put in the reference. So I think I'm closer to the real IFR, but I might have to update it one more time if there is more study. And on the usage, people usage, it actually that IFR is can be location specific. So if you can use the mortality, the overall mortality, and then time it with the demographic, the distribution of the demographic in your local, you can get the more accurate IFR for the location that you will try to model, and then you can plug in into here and then get correct number for hospital bed and ICU. But the forecast is immune from that.
Okay, so when when the death rate was presented as a simpler way, one of the simpler parameters, it sounds like it's still very complicated, right? Like
no, for that it's not complicated. You can fit it with just 2 lines. So the projection of the death is the same, like doesn't affect by the IFR. But
okay.
then using the death to project other thing else, you struggle by that IFR too.
Have you been able to use unsupervised models to find other things that affect the mortality rate?
I leave the estimation of the IFR for the expert in the field, mostly the medical doctor.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's all I got.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Seth. And again, thanks, Quoc. I think that was all the questions, unless anyone else out there had anything else. Doesn't look like it though, but if come up with any questions, feel free again to use that feedback form. We'll forward them over to Quoc, and yeah, feel free to connect, but let us know if there's anything else. Other than that, I hope you all have a great weekend. Stay safe, everyone, And thanks again, Quoc. This is awesome.
Thanks a lot, everybody, to stay this late for the call and some of the technical issue that we have. But I really enjoyed today and hope get more collaboration feedback from the people attending the talk today.
Absolutely. We'll be sure to forward it all to you. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.